Hi guys, this is Emily Johnson. I'm doing my presentation on MRSA. So what is MRSA? MRSA is a type of staph aureus that is resistant to antibiotics. These antibiotics include penicillin, oxacillin, and methicillin, which is where you get the MRSA name, which is methicillin-resistant staphylococcus aureus. Symptoms of MRSA include red, swollen, painful, warm to the touch infection sites, and usually you're going to get these infection sites from a wound. So you're not going to randomly necessarily get it. You usually have to have an open wound of some kind. For this reason, people with diabetes tend to get it more because their wounds take a long time to heal. And eczema or psoriasis patients also tend more to get it because eczema tends to be an open wound, and so does psoriasis. So that MRSA infection is going to appear like a seamless red blotch with a pustule usually. And this is a specific, this is a fairly bad infection, and you can see how that skin is just open. It's seamless. There's no division in it. It's not like a spider bite, which it is normally mistaken for at first. But the mortality rate for those who have MRSA is low unless you did acquire sepsis, and that mortality rate is anywhere from 20 to 50%. It depends on if you're immunocompromised or not. Fun fact, my great-grandmother at like 93 was able to fight off a MRSA infection, so I mean, it's just not a whole hope is lost if you get this. So these are some hallmark traits of MRSA. As you can see before, it is a seamless red blotch rather than a spider bite, which I said before, it's usually mistaken for at first. But you can see the difference here where there is the circumference of red surrounding that spider bite. And you can see here, there's a small kind of little tiny white dot where you would see that you were bitten by something. Whereas the MRSA infection, you can see, has that seamless red area with that pustule that is not indicative of that bite. So you can see the difference here, and you can obviously see that, I apologize for the graphic image, but you can see that infection in the hand and how severe this bacteria is if you get it and it's untreated. So MRSA and the immune system. It is a bacteria, so the body fights it through humoral and antibody-mediated immunity, as with any bacterial infection. The body creates antibodies specifically for this bacteria and attempt to kill it. In the University of Chicago, I found this in my research. I thought it was interesting. Recently published an article relating their findings that Staphylococcus aureus affects the immune system by converting the NETs into DADOs, as you can see, a molecule which is toxic to macrophages. This effectively turned these into a weapon against the immune system. So I thought that was extremely interesting. Just kind of shows how bad this bacteria really is. Really highlights that point. So sepsis with MRSA. An untreated MRSA infection, like in a wound or something, leads to sepsis. Symptoms of sepsis are, as reported by MRSA Survivors Network, a fever below 101.3, or a low temperature below 95. And then another symptom of this is a heart rate of a patient would be faster than 90 beats per minute, along with a fast respiratory rate. So you can really see the whole body trying to fight off this infection. This is accompanied by swelling and a probable or confirmed infection in an altered mental state where the patient is either in a coma or disoriented. So it's very, very dangerous. As you can see, it affects your entire body if you get the sepsis from this bacteria. So it's important anytime anyone has any suspected infection just to go ahead and see the doctor, before you get to this point. So research efforts against MRSA are less having to do with any vaccine. I did not see any research for a vaccine against MRSA. I think that would be a horrible idea since you're, sticking yourself with a needle, so you're getting a wound, and then, not a wound, but, you're opening your skin, and then you're putting this bacteria in it, so I don't think they're going to do that. That just seems bad idea, but the research efforts tend to be identifying why there's a high rate of this pathogen in the U.S. specifically, because there is a higher rate in the U.S. and other countries. And they control on just spreading, just make sure it doesn't spread too much, because it's very serious. I thought this was interesting. Again, University of Chicago MRSA Research Center is currently conducting a research project in the Dallas County Jail, just a couple minutes down the road, because just to determine how often this jail was contaminated with MRSA, and they've found quite a bit of it, and they're trying to figure out what is the best way to avoid this situation when you have that many people in contact with each other, because MRSA tends to be in places where it's nice and moist and wet, and a lot of people are going in and out, so you think gyms, you think jails, places like that, schools, kids touching things, and everything's everywhere, and not everything's getting cleaned all the time. And then we have in the history of MRSA, it appeared somewhere in the 1960s. Ever since then, it has been gaining prevalence in the United States. You can see from this graph here that it's significantly gone up since 1993 and to 2005. I couldn't find a more recent graph than this, so it's fairly good. It really shows you that really steady high incline of that prevalence. So one of the reasons of this prevalence, as we talked about in class with the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, is the lack of proper use of antibiotics. There's people who will be given antibiotics by a doctor, but stopping that treatment before it's meant to be over. So you have that low percent of that antibiotic in your system that's not enough to kill the bacteria, but at the same time you have that bacteria still present, so you give them an opportunity to develop immunity against it. So the future outlook for MRSA is just to be more aware of the development of these antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and making sure we are following through on antibiotic regimens, and it brings to light the extremes of the evolution of pathogens, and how they will defend their own survival and change. You think of, when we were discussing smallpox, how those really respected scientists were thinking, we're going to eradicate all infectious disease, and this is an example of why that's not necessarily reasonable. Because they're living organisms, they will defend themselves, and this is an example of why that is not exactly realistic. So this is my bibliography, and that was MRSA. And here is a pretty funny cartoon I found about it, because I don't know if I think I mentioned before, it's prevalent in hospitals because of the amount of antibiotics used and just people going in and out with sick people and immunocompromised. So this is a joke on that. This is the shortcut through the hospital kitchens that Albert was first approached by a member of antibiotic resistance. So that's courtesy of Google Images, and goes into the changing of that bacteria. So I will see you on Wednesday. Have a good day.